The delay.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to our Georgia Child Support Commission Statute Review Subcommittee meeting on Friday, February 24th. It's been a while because we decided to delay the December meeting because of all the holiday craziness that was going on and very few people could attend. And then I don't think we had one scheduled for January. So this has been our first meeting in a while, and I welcome you all. We, as you know, are having a few technical difficulties this morning, but Elaine Johnson is here, I think, via phone. And LaTanya, I'm just going to have you to go over the meeting rules and explain how we'll conduct the business virtually, if you will.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Judge. So yes, good morning, everyone. I'm LaTanya Lawrence, and I'm the program coordinator for the Georgia Child Support Commission. I will briefly discuss a few rules to help us navigate the meeting today via Zoom webinar. And sorry again for the delay. But
okay.
Today,
I'm in, LaTanya.
Oh, she's in.
I'm in.
Okay, so we just got to help Regina, and then and then everything should
okay, so Regina's having same kind of problems?
Regina does not have audio, so I don't even see Regina at all, but for a while I could see her face but could not hear her, and now I'm not sure what's going on.
Well, IT got me in, but he had to get me in through admin rights, so I don't know what in the world is going on today, but
I still see Regina listed.
Okay, so she's back as a panelist now.
Okay, yeah, I see her.
Let's see.
Maybe she went off and back on. Regina, can you say something and see if we can hear you, or can you hear us? And then do we know who 706-207-3520 is?
No.
Okay. That's me.
oh, that's Regina. So she dialed in.
Okay, we can hear you.
All right.
All right. Sorry, LaTanya, if you'll continue with the rules.
Thank you. So yes, the statute review subcommittee members are staff and designed as panelists within Zoom and can speak anytime during this meeting. All other participants are designated as attendees and are muted during the meeting, but may type a message in the Zoom chat feature if needed. The Child Support Commission does not hear public comments during any of its subcommittee meetings. Accordingly, we will not be accepting public comments today. However, you may leave a written comment for the commission at any time through the commission's website at our csc.georgiacourts.gov/public comments. For your convenience, I will put that web address in the Zoom chat momentarily. Also, anyone wishing to give public comment by speaking may do so at any full Child Support Commission meeting, which will be the next one will be held on May 2nd, 2023. And the details of that next meeting will be posted well in advance of that meeting on our commission's website as well. Thank you. And back to, well, let's see here. I guess we're going to switch it on to Elaine now.
Yeah, Elaine, if you will tell me if we've established a quorum for voting purposes.
Well, I think we have not, but I want to run through who I see present. And if I've missed someone, then let me know. Obviously, Judge Williford, Regina Quick, Christina Scott, Byron Cuthbert, and Pat Bonadono. Have I missed someone who is a member of the subcommittee? I don't think I have. So no, ma'am, we do not have quorum. We need 8 for quorum.
Okay.
So well, we're shy by 3 people.
I think I may be a member.
Who is that?
Charles Finardi.
No, Charles, you're not a member of this. You're a DCSS representative.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay.
There are certain people who are we have to establish quorum for. They have to be a member of the statute review subcommittee. And I have a hard time figuring out who that is too. This is why we passed it to Elaine. But if she tells me we don't have a quorum, then I think that we will have to move past the voting, and you can distribute that to the members via an email vote, the way we've had to do it in the past for approval.
Right. Now, I know that we're going to have Katie joining us a little bit later.
Okay.
And, maybe some of the other members will be able to join. I doubt Senator Strickland, because he's probably
Yeah, I would be shocked.
Yeah,
So we will say if we get quorum, we'll move back to that. If not, we'll have to approve the minutes via an email vote.
right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, then I'm going to move on then to the business of the subcommittee. And one of the main things that we need to talk about today is our contract with Dr. Venor regarding alternatives for parenting time and low income deviations. And I'm going to call on you, Elaine, to provide us a status update regarding that contract.
Okay, thank you, Judge. We haven't met since November, but during all of that time period between December and January, we were negotiating the terms of the contract with Dr. Venor, her company, Center for Policy Research, and we were working on the deliverables at the same time. We actually, as late as yesterday, amended the deliverables with one final item, and that is the Division of Child Support Services asked us to add a domestic violence component to parenting time, just to see what other states are doing to deal with DV and parenting time. So we have added that. I literally emailed the contract, all the components of the contract to Dr. Venor this morning, asking her to verify that the terms, everything is still okay for the price that she had quoted. We negotiated the price over about a month of time. So all of that's done as far as we're concerned. That contract's moving forward as soon as it's signed. We do have her scheduled to join us for the April 21st meeting so that she would be prepared to jump in feet first with everything that we need to know about next steps, with her helping us navigate the parenting time and low income.
And that is our next meeting. That's the 2:00 meeting via Zoom, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. So
What was that date, Elaine? I'm sorry.
It's
it's
April.
Friday, April the 21st at 2
Right.
p.m.
Thank you.
And we will send out a save the date with the meeting notice so everyone can mark their calendars.
So that'll be wonderful. Hopefully the contract will be signed and we'll be ready to rock and roll with hearing from Dr. Venor on April 21st. That will be a very important meeting. Hopefully as many of our members as possible can attend that meeting, because I think that meeting is going to be a crucial one. All right. Anything else on that status update, Elaine?
No, ma'am, that's it.
Well, as we know, one of the most important things to deal with and trying to get this working properly in terms of a parenting time adjustment is the legitimation issue that's sort of standing in our way. And I'd like to know if anyone on the call from any of the organizations has an update regarding if any of your groups, DHS or anybody from the family law section of the state bar or anyone else knows of any legitimation reform efforts that are going on currently in our state. And if so, if y'all could give us anything you know about any of that. And if not, if something does come up, if you'll please let us know, because we really want to keep this issue on our radar. Regina, are you aware of anything? You're on mute, or I don't know if it's an issue or if it's just yeah, I think we're still having some problems with Regina. Let's see.
No, I'm
Okay.
allowed to talk.
Let's
Maybe.
see.
There she is.
Here you go.
All right. Regina, are you aware of any efforts
She just-
of legislation
She just got
reform?
muted again.
No, you can hear me, right?
I can.
Yes,
Go
you
ahead.
can.
So I'm muted on the Zoom, but not on the call, which is where I'm connecting via the audio. So
Okay.
Judge, I will say, I don't know if the subcommittee has seen SB 135 and taken a look at that bill that has come out of committee. I would say it is legitimation reform light in that it modernizes the genetic testing codes and the self-authentication of those court-ordered genetic testing reports and results would be admissible in other civil actions. And that actually is one of the department's bills, the DHS bills for this session, and part of the Lieutenant Governor's package as well. And so I do expect that bill to move to the floor probably next week. And as far as any further comprehensive legitimation reform, I think our efforts to work on what the code would look like if you did that have been hampered by the shortness and compressed nature of the session. So from the department standpoint, I doubt that you'll see anything from us, but we all, I think I speak for Byron and Charlie as well. We all are focused on trying to do something this biennium around that topic. But as of now, I don't have wording for anyone.
Help me understand how SB 135 would reform in any way the legitimation statute. Does that have to
The
do with
test results.
paternity, or would that actually, the test results, would that establish some sort of legal rights?
No, it doesn't establish any legal rights, but it does allow those fathers to not have to reinvent the wheel in the legitimation proceeding. Those court-ordered results will be self-authenticating.
I see.
And as you may not, but many judges around the state require that in legitimation proceedings.
Okay.
That's sort of their standard operating procedure.
So that would be step one, and then they would have to prove that they haven't abandoned their opportunity interest and it's in the best interest of the child and those things. But at least step one would be addressed under SB 135.
I think that's the way the Division of Child, I'm sorry, Judge. I think that's the way the Division of Child Support Services certainly saw it when they suggested this be part of the legislative package, and that was my intent when I drafted it. Let's put it that way. It sort of fell to me to go to the Uniform Parentage Act and put together some language with Ms. Carter's able help and expertise, and so that's our hope, and we will continue working. And I wish the family law section would as well, but I don't know what they're doing.
Well, you know, Katie's not on, and she is a member of I believe, a member of the legislative committee for the family law section. So maybe when I think she's going to try to hop on later, maybe we can circle back to this and see if she knows anything that the family law section is working on. Because when I spoke to their president last year, we did address this issue, and I feel like this was something that was on their radar. So maybe she'll have an update for us when she hops on, if no one else does, regarding that issue.
Judge Williford, this is Elaine. Noelle also wanted to speak to this as well. It may be some of what Regina's mentioned already, but I wanted to let you know if we can circle back to this when she's able to join at about 11 o'clock.
Yeah, and that's what I spoke to Noelle, and I thought she said about 11 o'clock. So we will definitely come back to that issue. And certainly legitimation is outside of the purview of what the Georgia Child Support Commission can do. But we're just interested to know what other organizations are doing, because it might, in fact, I know it would be important in how we could correct the parenting time issue if we would have more options if the legitimation law was different in our state, is my understanding and belief. So we will circle back to that then when Katie gets on and when Noelle gets on, and see if there's some other things that can be addressed in that area. So we'll move then to LaTanya on the report of the status of the public survey on replacing the terms custodial parent and non-custodial parent.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Excuse me. Thank you, Judge. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully the correct screen comes up, please. Let's see here. And go to, this thing is in my way. I can't see. There we go. Can everyone see the screen?
Yeah, but it has a message in the middle of it that says, all done, you can close this file now.
Boo. See if I can move that kind of out the way a little bit. Okay, hopefully this is better. Okay. So I am just going to give a status on the public survey on replacing the terms custodial parent and non-custodial parent in the OCGA 19615. We were asking the public about kind of their ideas on renaming custodial and non-custodial parent. So we're kind of redoing our website, creating a link so people can go on there, click the link, put in their suggestions, and we will take all that and, conform it and come up with a overall answer at the end.
Latana, I don't know if you're just not ready to move forward on the slide presentation, but we still have that message, all done. You can close this file now.
Oh man, really?
Yeah, we're not able to see the individual slides that you've prepared.
Right.
Oh, man. Okay, let's see here. I'm trying to see if.
I mean, what's happening on my end is that message is frozen. I can't clear it off my screen at all.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah,
There we go.
Okay. It's like, it's just today. How about that? It's just
Okay.
today. Let's go back. Okay,
Can
here
we
we
look
go.
at slide 2?
Yes. Okay,
Okay.
so finally, okay, I had a really nice, it was nicer than this, but anyway, it's fine. So when you go into the actual website, our csc.georgiacourts.gov website, we just took a snippet of kind of like the part where you can see the child support calculator on the left-hand side and the IDO tab on the right-hand side. This is where we place the link for the public would click the link and it says, we want your feedback. It's a little fuzzy, but it won't, it'll look nice and clear when we finish it up. This is just a draft. And hopefully this is, engaging for people to see it and want to actually like, oh, this is very interesting. Let me click on the link, give some information. If there's any suggestions are welcome. I mean, it's not finalized. So if anyone has a different, different look or wanted to sing and, play music, whatever, not music, but, just to make it a little bit more, exuberant or just try to dial it down a little bit, that's welcome also.
I have a question.
Yes.
How big is it actually going to be on the website?
Ooh,
Is this the size that it's going to be, or is it going to be bigger?
it's going to be smaller than this. It's kind
Okay,
of,
I don't think that's going to get much attention unless it's like in their face.
maybe like,
It will be in their face.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's gonna like the logo is not gonna go down the side, but of course, on the website, it'll just shrink down. So but I think it's just because right here on the actual website, it's just blank. And that's what people are kind of used to. But then, like, oh, well, what is this? I don't know, maybe like Pat was suggesting, probably throwing something behind it, like a background or something, just to make it a
Make
little
it
bit.
flash.
Make
Well,
it
we can-
flash.
yeah. We can maybe have it
Sometimes
slip
when I'm
in on the
on-
page or- I mean, we
Yeah.
can make it flash possibly.
Sometimes when I'm on a website and I want to read, let's say a news article,
Mhm.
this ad pops up, right? And I can't get to my news article until I actually
Right.
X out of this that's blocking I don't know if that would be possible, but I mean, if it literally popped up and said, we want your feedback, please complete this short survey, click here. And they had to address that. They had to click off of it in order to move forward on the child support calculator. That would certainly get their attention because they would have to read it. They might not have to participate, but they would at least have to read that we want your feedback. I don't know if that's an option. Or as Pat said, if it could flash, or anything that would really just catch folks' attention.
I really do like both of your suggestions. I really do. I'm pretty sure we can run it across IT. I don't
Yeah.
see why they would not be able to. I really like the idea of it actually, when you're on the website, like Judge Wilford did say, and it's like, oh, you can't go anywhere and just click it. off
Until
of
you
the
address this.
delay,
Yeah,
right.
until you address this and click on this X, you can't really do what you went to the website to do.
Yes,
That might be very helpful.
that's a good idea.
Mhm.
Like that one.
The one thing I don't want to do though, Judge, and I understand what you're asking for. I don't want to prevent people from being able to click over to the IDO website or even click over to the calculator.
Mhm. That's what I was just
We'll have
thinking.
some angry visitors.
I understand. We certainly can't make
You don't wanna
them
make 'em.
participate. Yeah, we definitely can't make them participate, and we don't want to block the calculator or the IDO in any way. So, those are certainly things to consider. But if there was something that maybe it could pop up in the corner, but it's just sort of bothersome to them, but it doesn't freeze the child support calculator or the
Right.
IDO,
Like just a regular pop-up, because I was thinking
yeah, but
Yeah.
not one that
mandatory, but a
not
pop-up
one
like.
that prevents them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can
That'll be
definitely
effective.
talk to IT about that and see if they have any other ideas. But the placement of it, one of the things that we worked on was that when someone comes into the Child Support Commission website, we want to make sure that they don't have to scroll to find this. It's right up there at the top,
Yeah.
underneath the welcome. And a lot of people are accustomed to coming to this site if they don't go directly to the calculator, and they come to this website and they're used to seeing the green button for the calculator, the blue button for IDO. We're going to slip this one in between the two. It's going to be larger, much more visual. So I think that's going to help.
Well, we could discuss, because I think we were going to discuss today whether we can go ahead and go live on it. We could discuss going live, and then if we're not getting the results, we could discuss making some modifications to it. I mean, because
Right.
there's some interest in not continuing to delay the survey,
Right.
So
Well, the other thing that we're going to do is once you click onto the calculator homepage, this same button is going to display. So we're going to have to work on creating what that's going to look like on the calculator homepage, and we'll have to do a deployment to add that button. But all that can happen very quickly.
yeah.
If you're satisfied with the button, then Latana, can you show them what happens when they click the button?
Yep.
Yeah, let's
Very
move
good.
on to that.
Yes. So these are the questions that will come up once they click on the actual link. So the public, they can select one or more from the list down below. You have receiver payer, payer payee, obligee, obligor, greater time parent, lesser time parent, or they can also enter in their own suggestions. And then we'll just hit submit, and then they'll just tally it up, and we'll just come up with, if we keep it the same, change it, this, that, or the other.
And I think that should be one of the options is, because people feel obligated a lot of times, I think, when they're taking a survey, just to choose one, right? That's, in my opinion, it's rare that people enter their own suggestion. They may, but it would be more likely they would choose one that's already there. So it seems like one of the options should be, keep the terms custodial parent and non-custodial parent.
Well, Judge Williford, I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to bring that attention today, is that I believe we need to leave those terms in there for people to have an opportunity to vote on if they want to stay with the terms. So yes, we would like to do that as well.
Mhm. Any comments from anyone else regarding the survey or the terms that are listed?
I agree with Elaine, because I think the very first question should be, you think we should change these terms? And then if so, select or enter your own suggestion. But I think that needs to be an actual question on the survey.
Well, that may be a good idea, but if we put as one of the selections, no change needed, keep custodial parent and non-custodial parent, wouldn't that do the same thing without requiring them to answer a separate question?
I suppose it might just be faster for people who just want to keep it the way it is.
Yeah.
You could put custodial, non-custodial, and then maybe in parentheses next to it to say the way that it currently is, or
Or-
the current terminology.
Yeah, no
in Georgia.
change. Yeah.
Yeah, no
Current
change
terms.
as the first option.
Yeah.
And then the other one.
custodial, non-custodial, parentheses, current language, or no change from current language, something like that to explain. Because it's sort of an odd question if you say public survey on changing the terms custodial parent, non-custodial parent, select one or more of the list, custodial parent or non-custodial parent. So we need to explain to them in parentheses, no changes, but I think that needs to be one of the ones, because the way it's written now, it assumes that everybody thinks there should be a change, and there may be people who believe there shouldn't be a change. In fact, I've spoken to many people about this issue who are in the family law world, who are judges and practitioners, who are very concerned about the change. And the more I talk to them, the more concerns I have. And I was one of the biggest advocates of proposing a change. And I believe there should be a change. The issue that I have is consistency, because the Georgia Child Support Commission only has the authority to recommend changes to the child support statute, right? So if you look at the whole title for, domestic relations in the code, of course, there's plenty of sections that deal with legitimation and custody and parenting time and all these other, divorce and custody code sections that are still going to be using the terms custodial parent, non-custodial parent, right? So there's going to be a real inconsistency in our title. And that's concerning to me. And again, I hate to keep throwing things back to the family law section, but it seems as if perhaps the State Bar Family Law section, their statute review or legislative committee could work on whether or not there needs to be a changing of the terms custodial parent and non-custodial parent in the entire, title, as it relates to families and children and, custody and support and everything else, so that there's consistency. I still want to do the public survey, and I think that the results of the public survey are important and things that we could share with the family law section. But the things like receiver and payer and payee and payor and obligee and obligor, and those things, they clearly are just about money. They're just about child support. And so I can envision a settlement agreement or a divorce decree or anything like that, where, you're calling them, custodial parent, non-custodial parent, or whatever terms that the code sections and the custody part talk about, all throughout the settlement agreement or the divorce decree. And then all of a sudden you switch to payee, payor, or receiver and payer. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. As it relates to this section, the person who has custody or parenting time or whatever, which one of these is the payor and which one is the payee? So we just need to figure out how we're going to make it consistent. And we've talked about this before. And it could be that we can just change it in one section and not change it in the other. But that's something I think in a broader sense that we ought to talk to the family law section about, is whether or not they've considered discussing a change to this terminology. Because as I've stated before, while there are some parents that are certainly non-custodial parents, a large group of our citizens, in fact, I would think the majority, they're very involved in their children's lives. And it seems that the terminology non-custodial parent is is not the proper way to address them. So that's just but anything from anybody else on the survey, on the terms for the survey, or any of the concerns that I just remarked on?
I will just say that the terms custodial parent and non-custodial parent are losing words, are defined in the child support guidelines. So in our own statute, you know, they're defined for purposes of the statute, the child support statute only.
Yeah.
So that may be something that I don't know whether the family law section will want to make things more uniform or if it's even possible, but
Yeah,
certainly worth having a discussion about.
yeah, there's, you know, the idea of consistency or inconsistency, and whether or not we're going to make things more confusing, because are we really solving the problem if we're only talking about it in terms of child support, but we're not talking about it in terms of anything else? But again, this is the Child Support Commission, and any recommendations we make have to do with the actual child support statute and the child support guidelines, and not the other sections. I just have, again, in my efforts to try to correct what I see as a problem, I've spoken to many practitioners and judges and others regarding this issue, and there's consistently raised the issue of consistency. So I think that it would be important for us to put that on our survey as an option that could be chosen, which would be to keep custodial parent and non-custodial parent.
Judge, I'm sorry. I think we're need to get Katie in. She is trying to join us.
Okay, wonderful.
I just wrote Latana asking her, would
Oh.
she please promote Katie for us?
All right, does anyone have any other terms that they wanted added to the list, or
I think one that may need to be added would be primary parent and secondary parent, primary custodial parent, secondary custodial parent. I hear that one at times in the mediation context, at least.
Yeah,
Okay,
I used primary and secondary custodial parent a lot in my drafting when I was a family law attorney.
do
Rather
we
than,
call this primary parent and secondary parent? Would that be the correct terms? Primary parent? Christina, thank you.
Yeah, primary parent, secondary parent, or sometimes I've
Okay.
heard as primary custodial parent, secondary custodial parent. So I'm
Right.
still using that word custodial, but primary and
right.
secondary.
I think that
Yeah.
would be the
That's
proper
probably
way to
better.
use it. Primary
Yeah.
custodial parent, secondary custodial parent.
Right.
Katie,
problem-
welcome, Katie. We are on the status of the public survey on replacing the terms custodial parent and non-custodial parent. Latana had shared with us a draft of the webpage with the survey, and we were getting.
I think I was able to see/hear most of that conversation. I wasn't a panelist yet, but I saw where the button's going to go and heard the discussion about the green button, blue button. So
Okay, perfect. I'm glad you're on.
yeah, so I think I've heard more of it than y'all realized I had.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So, anybody have any concerns or comments on adding as an option primary custodial parent and secondary custodial parent as an option on the survey list?
Judge Williford, this is Elaine. I have a comment to make about it before anybody goes further.
Okay,
The difficulty we're going to have in definition A9, the purpose of that definition, and then A14 is to help someone when you're doing a 50-50 joint physical custody.
I see.
In those definitions, you have to declare a non-custodial parent.
Yeah.
So that we couldn't have two people named custodial. We'd have no non-custodial to name pursuant to A9 and A14.
So if we said primary parent and secondary parent and left out the word custodial, that would solve that, correct?
I think it would, yes.
Mhm.
Like the greater than, less than.
Yeah.
That's probably my least favorite of all of them. One parent is greater than the other. No, I don't think that one's gonna fly. Let's, anybody have any other opinions on primary parent, secondary parent as being a survey option? Anybody feel like that's a good idea, adding primary parent and secondary parent? Show of hands. Not seeing a lot of, all right. Well, why don't we add that one if there's no
Okay.
objection? Anybody object to adding that one? I don't know. We still don't have a quorum, so I don't know that this is a voting thing. I think it's just we're brainstorming ideas. And certainly it doesn't mean everybody thinks it's a good idea. It just means it's part of our survey. So if you don't like it, vote against it. Any other terms that we feel like ought to be part of our survey?
Judge Williford, I'm just gonna opine and just let everybody do with this what you will. And perhaps it's because I'm feeling extremely punchy. But, and I may have shared this with y'all once before, but I have a high school friend. I promise I have a point, since I start a story like that. I have a high school friend who's a middle child, and he, you know, he's not every middle child is like this, but he's one of those middle child who really felt like, I was a middle child.
Yeah.
And so when he had children, he had one child, and then his wife had twins. And he was bound and determined not to let either one of those twins be the middle child. So he insisted with his wife that they would never share with the family which one was actually born first, so that none of them could slip. And they would never share with the twins which one was actually born first. And so literally neither one of these twins, they're now maybe, I don't know, give or take 13, 14 years old. They don't know. The only people who know are the doctor and the two parents and, whatever nurse and other health professionals were in the room, and they will not disclose it because he was, he was so incensed by the label, and he couldn't figure out a way to do it, A, B, first, second, primary, and it just, he never got over it. So I'm just saying, I think this is a laudable issue. I'm glad we're discussing it. I think that kind of thing is important. As we've discussed before, words are important, labels are important, but I'm just saying sometimes, anyway, do with that what you will. Like I said, it's a Friday. I'm going to opine. I'm going to stop now. I think you all know what I'm getting at. I'm just putting it out there that sometimes.
Well, I think that's the problem is we
It is the
can't
problem.
figure out a way not to hurt somebody's feelings.
That's
Whether we
what
call
I'm
it
saying.
parent A and parent B, it's why do I have to be parent B?
Why am I exactly
Right.
and
Greater
that's
than,
what I'm
less than, primary, secondary.
That's what I'm
One, two, yeah.
saying.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
Someone's
You
gonna
run
be
into-
unhappy.
And you run into these twins, if you ran into them tomorrow and said,
Yeah.
and some people do, well, which one of you was born first? And, most twins can tell you, I'm 2 minutes older, I'm 4 minutes older.
Yeah.
These kids literally don't know. And it was because their dad was so bothered by being a middle child that he swore those who knew to secrecy and wouldn't share it with the rest of the family. And these kids
Yeah.
are like 14 years old now. So I'm
Yeah.
just saying, sometimes it's an impossible situation.
Yeah, it is, but to me, and the reason I used it previously, if there was a parent who had lesser time, and there usually was, is to me, it was preferable to custodial and
Non-custodial. I agree.
non-custodial makes it sound like there's no, you have no custody rights,
I agree.
So as much as I didn't love secondary, I preferred it to
The notion
the way
that
I was seeing a lot of them written was non-custodial parent.
right. Agreed.
And in fact, in my circuit, there's a standard visitation schedule that had been used forever that was typed up, and you could come in here and say, show me Culpeper standard, and they would hand it to you and it would say, non-custodial parent shall pick up the child on da, 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 and non-custodial parent shall, and I was like, what is this non-custodial parent? So, because I was offended by the notion, but anyway, it's going to be a difficult time to correct this using any custodial terms, which is why we started talking about payor and payee and obligor and obligee and receiving and paying parent and those sorts of things, right? The problem with those may be that when you start reading it and you get to the child support section, you're like, all right, here's the custody section, here's the parenting plan. Which one of these folks is the payor or the payee or the, because there's not this consistency in the code sections. Which is why I literally called Elaine one day as I woke up in the middle of the night thinking about it. And I thought, why can't we just use their names? Elaine, why can't we just say Paul and Eric or Paul and Annie or, and she was like, well, that's going to be difficult. And it was the same thing. It was the consistency thing, because if in this section, we're calling them custodial and non-custodial or whatever for custody purposes or the parenting plan, but over here we're calling them Paul and Annie, and so that's why I hearkened back to, is this something that is on the radar, has ever been on the radar of the family law section? And are we trying to reinvent the wheel here, or is this something that folks are already talking about? Because we know from looking at other states that while the majority are still using custodial and non-custodial, some states have moved away from that terminology. And I'm just wondering if the family law section has ever, or if this terminology issue is on the radar at all.
I can get a short answer to that question. I mean, I've only been on the executive committee since, I don't know, this past summer, but my law partner just finished her term as chair. So she's been on it for years and years. I can get an answer today. Probably can't get it right this second, but I can get an answer for you. I will tell you, it has not come up in the 6 months that I've been on it.
Okay.
There's another suggestion in chat. I just want to make sure that we made note of that.
Okay.
Could parent who pays support and parent who receives support be options?
Yeah, I think we have payor and receiver, don't we?
Mhm.
Which
Yes.
is,
And in the federal statutes, it's custodial parent and non-custodial parent, which is how we ended up with that language, I think.
right.
Yeah, they also use obligee, obligor, which nobody seems to understand.
Right.
Still, it's in our survey.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
right.
a Fed thing. I want to say Jason Nonis mentioned that to us one time in one of our meetings, that's
Yeah.
a Fed thing. They like us to use obligee, obligor, but people I talk to on the phone, if they see those words in their documents, they don't have a clue. Moms and dads, they don't have a clue what that means. They can't even pronounce obligee, obligor. They're difficult terms for people.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we did put on the survey an option to type in if there's
Right.
something else. And it could be that we get those survey results and somebody has typed one in that we go, this is a great idea, right? And then maybe we add that as a survey result. I don't think this has to be the end all be all survey. But I think we need to get started somewhere, but are we ready to ask for approval to go live if we add primary parent and secondary parent and then add the section that says no changes, keep
Right.
custodial, non-custodial? And then of course we have that fill in the blank down there if you have another suggestion. What do y'all think? Y'all ready to approve going live on that with those changes?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Anybody have an objection to that? I just think it's important to we keep talking about it and keep
Mhm.
delaying it. I think it's important to get started. And it doesn't mean that if we see it's not working, if we're not getting the results, or if we need to make some changes to it, that we can address that at the April 21st meeting. Doesn't have to be set in stone. All right, well, let's make those changes then, Elaine, and all right, any further suggesting on advertising for that? Elaine, fill me in on where all that's going to be.
Okay, we, staff has worked on this fairly lengthy list, and I was thinking I wanted to try to share my screen, but with all the difficulty I've had this morning, I'm hesitant to move things around.
I can
But
read it, or you can read it, or.
okay, I'll be glad to share it with everyone. So we've looked at, because I think I can move through it pretty quickly. We've looked through the ideas of, where do we want to advertise? Number one, it'll be on the Child Support Commission website, easy to access. And it's also going to be on the Child Support Calculator homepage. We're going to have to shift the homepage around a bit, but we're going to put it there because we're going to reach a lot of people through the Child Support Calculator, with lawyers coming to the site, pro se litigants coming to the site, mediation, a lot of people coming there to use the calculator. They'll see that survey. We realize that people can take the survey multiple times, which I don't think that's a problem at all, but they'll have access to be able to do that. The Division of Child Support Services is definitely going to advertise it. We would like to do that through Atlanta Legal Aid, Georgia Legal Services, State Bar, Family Law Section, the Morehouse Fathers Program, GODR, our Child Support Commission listserv, which would send out a notice, and they would be able to access the link. Councils of Superior, Juvenile, and Magistrate Court judges, to get them. The Georgia Justice Project, all of our family law information centers, 159 clerks of Superior Court. We'll see how, if they'll put some sort of information in their offices. I don't know if they would put it on their website. That would require probably more than anyone would be really willing to do, but maybe they could put a flyer out. So we could create some kind of flyer that maybe they could lay out if they would be willing to print it. There's a lot of ifs in there. The Council of Court Administrators, Public Libraries, the Southwest Georgia Legal Self-Help Center, Middle Georgia Justice, the Georgia CASAs, Family Connection Partnership, Sarah Malden. We would go to her as a law librarian and see if we can, she's been great about helping us do things like that in the past. We would also do a press release. So that's a long list. We'll be able to capture everything, all the survey information into an Excel spreadsheet. And as a result, then, massage that data to find out what came back to us, including, any new ideas, see, and then we could report back to you, whenever. And we were hoping to let this run maybe 6 months, and see what people have to say about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds like I can't even imagine who else we could add to that list. That's a very,
it's pretty exhaustive, but everybody, you may have, but here's the thing. If someone receives it, one of the things we'll do in the email is encourage them, share this with any other partner that you have.
Yeah.
So that it can reach a large group of people.
Yeah.
And just people coming into the calculator or the commission website on a daily basis would give folks an opportunity to participate in the survey. And I'm thinking that Noelle's going to join us pretty soon.
She's on. Noelle's
is she
on.
good? Okay.
Yes.
We could go back to the legitimation item.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other questions or comments on the status of the public survey, then let's make those changes. Let's go live and let's get it to as many of those agencies who will partner with us. And then on April 21st, y'all can bring us up to speed on where all the survey can be found and what, if any, results are coming in, and if any changes need to be made. Because I don't think we've actually talked about how long the survey would be out there, or kind of, when this information would be compiled, but maybe at least if there are any issues that have come up, then we can discuss those on April 21st. And then maybe at that time we can discuss further, depending on what kind of results we're getting, if we need to continue it, how long we need to continue it, or when we need to take the survey down.
Right.
Okay?
And Latana will definitely monitor for those things, because if we reach a point where it's stagnant and no one is clicking the button because they've already answered the survey previously, we'll know what's coming in from our IT department. So Latana will be watching for that very thing.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'm going to take us back to legitimation, because I know that Katie's on now and Noelle are on now, and neither were on when we talked about the legitimation. I asked the members to report on any legitimation reform efforts that they knew about by other organizations like the State Bar, Family Law Section, or DHS. And Regina had talked about SB 135. But I wanted Noelle for you to pick up and tell us what you know. And then Katie, if you knew of anything that was going on with the State Bar Family Law Section regarding legitimation reform, if you could address that. But we'll start with Noelle.
Sure. Thank you, Judge Williford. First of all, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, great. I've been in and out of a lot of venues, so you never know. Yeah, personally, I'm only aware of SB 135 for which I know Regina Quick already discussed. So I really loved seeing this on the agenda so that I could be as well informed if anybody else heard of anything, because it would be important for us to know of those developments. But I am unaware of anything further.
Okay, well, tell us what you know about SB 135.
Only very limitedly, based on hearing that I attended last week, that it was it was pulling from the uniform. Really, I'm not the person to be speaking on
Well,
this.
probably you don't have anything to add then that Regina hasn't already told.
No, I'm
Okay.
certain I don't, other than it pulls from a portion of the Uniform Parentage Act, which is coming from the uniform rules people, but the uniform laws people. But no, truly, I'm sure I don't have anything to add further than Regina.
Since Regina and Holly were the ones that helped draft it, they probably know more than you. Is that what you're trying to say?
I am 1,000% sure of
Okay. Katie, do you know anything about whether or not the State Bar Family Law Section or any other organization is working on legitimation reform efforts?
It is my understanding that is not on the agenda for the State Bar Family Law Section, and has not been at least not in the last year or so. I just checked that with my law partner, who, as I just mentioned, is the most recent past chairman of the Family Law Section, and it was not on her agenda. So that means that covers about 18 months. It hasn't been on the agenda in at least 18 months.
Okay. All right. Well, I am going to then kick it over to you, Katie, and let you pick up on paragraph D, application of Social Security payments to child support arrears. And I think that Pat has done a lot of research and prepared a handout for us.
I have a hand off to me, but I'm going to hand it straight to Pat.
Okay.
Did I send you the article that I was working from? I have found, number one, thank you to Ryan Bradley, who has helped me get started on this. The question is, using when a parent gets Social Security disability and the child gets a benefit as a result of that, can that be used to, if it's more than the amount of current support, can it be used to offset or to pay toward an arrearage? And this is really a mixed question in the United States. A lot of states some of them are still requiring a modification before they'll even consider allowing the parent to use the Social Security benefits for current support for an offset. But Georgia kind of changed that with a case here and kind of set the standard for allowing that to be used for current support. But for arrearages, what I have found is that there's a case, an Alabama case called Brazil, Brazeal versus Brazil, and it's 756 South 2nd 889. This is an older case, but what it says, and I actually like the logic of this one, that the disability overage that's paid to the child that is in excess of child support, current child support, may be used if it was accrued at or after the time the parent applied for disability. If it is applied to an arrearage that is older than the disability, they feel like that's a windfall for the non-custodial parent. So, but then there is another case where there was a lump sum payment made, and that lump sum payment was allowed to be credited to the parent's child support arrearage because otherwise, you know, it's depriving the mother and the child of that available money. So that's another case that West Virginia, was in West Virginia. So it's really a mixed bag, but in doing this, what I have found out is that the courts do have the authority. So presumably our legislature also has the authority to allow an overage. So for example, if the current child support obligation is $200 a month and the child gets $300 a month due to the parent's disability and dependent benefits, then that extra $100 a month could be, right now, the mother just gets to keep, the custodial parent just gets to keep that money. If it was allowed to be applied to arrearages, that, again, I think the money is more helpful to go to the needs of the child. And I know that courts have been allowing people to do this, and but I didn't come across any legislation that specifically addresses it. That's pretty much what I've got. Ryan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Pat. I could just piggyback a little bit off of that and say when the award is in excess of the current support and there are arrearages due, then what you have to do to enforce that arrearage is to come up with an amount to further withhold from a fixed income. So, you know, in that case, if the $400 is coming out of the benefit, the child support's only $200, you're still going to have to go into whatever fixed income that they have and propose a deduction from those benefits to go towards those arrears. So it'll be the 400 plus the additional whatever the courts come up with.
So you're saying that the extra 200 does not go toward the arrearage?
Currently, correct. So if there's a $200 support amount, and the custodial parent is receiving a $400 direct benefit based off the non-custodial parent's Social Security, that extra 200 will not go towards the arrearage.
Right.
And we have to break down the lump sum payment to make sure that we don't reduce it, the arrearage. So we have to calculate back for the retroactive benefit to make sure there's nothing. So then what would have to happen would there would be an extra amount in addition to that 400 that would then be withheld. Because as you know, that $400 benefit does not decrease the non-custodial parent's benefit in any amount.
Correct.
What you would do is then decrease it and perhaps put them in a hardship to pay the excess. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess my question is, you wanted to bring this to the attention of the Statute Review Committee. And are you proposing then that any amount over the amount of current child support be allowed to be used toward an arrearage? And if that's the case, then do you want a limitation on that, for example, from the date of the arrearage that accrued from the date of the disability?
I mean, that's outside really my purview. I mean, at this point, you're kind of asking me what I personally feel, and I personally feel that any overage should go towards any arrearage, because still you're dealing with a limited income at this point. And no matter what time that arrearage was received, but I don't think that overage should be used to overpay child support.
Which it's doing, essentially.
If there's an arrearage due, I think that overage should be used or could be used to satisfy the arrearage, but I don't think that after that arrearage is satisfied, then you start future crediting.
Right. So, I don't know. It's out there. This is for the subcommittee to consider. The issue of, is it a windfall for the custodial parent if the amount of Social Security received is above the amount of current support? Because right now she just, I say she, shame on me, the custodial parent gets to keep that money. And it cannot be applied against an arrearage. So the non-custodial parent, I mean, a lot of courts have looked at this and said it depends on the non-custodial parent's actions before the disability. If they allowed an arrearage to accrue while they were working, then it would be a huge windfall to them to cure the arrearage with this disability payment. So that's something I think that the courts should at least be allowed to consider, whether or not it could be applied. And I think that we have to make a change to the guidelines in order to allow that to happen.
I also think we'd have several different types of windfalls that are allowed. So you have lottery winnings that can be offset. You have the annual tax returns that are offset.
No, that's true.
You could even look at a lump sum court purge as a windfall as well. And,
Okay.
all of those are counted.
No, that's all a consideration. So I will leave it to the leadership of the committee to decide whether this is something we want to consider bringing to the legislature.
I'm a little bit confused. I have a question. So they have an arrearage, then they get qualified then for the child to receive the Social Security off of whoever the disabled parent is.
Correct.
Who happens to be I'll call him the payor. And they're getting $800 a month, even though the divorce decree or the child support order or whatever only says $400 a month. So they're paying $400 more. They're not really paying it. The government's paying it.
Correct.
$400 more than their obligation. All right.
Yes.
So custodial parent then is getting twice the child support they were before the non-custodial parent got disabled. All right. So, but let's say they had a $20,000 arrearage. And so the suggestion, Pat, being that extra $400 a month would go to reduce that arrearage. And, then let's just say it happens for so long that the arrearage gets paid off, right? So now, custodial parent will continue to receive $800 a month. Nothing's changed. There's just no arrearage. So
Correct.
if, the non-custodial parent wins the lottery or whatever, it's theirs, that we don't have to worry about it going towards this arrearage because this arrearage is taken care of, is what you're suggesting, right?
Yes.
It's not really gonna help or hurt the custodial or the non-custodial parent as long as nobody's going after the non-custodial parent for the arrearage anyway, right? But if the non-custodial parent runs into some windfall somewhere, it protects that windfall because they don't have to worry about the arrearage.
Correct.
Because I guess my question is, are judges actually going after, because I know their benefits can't be garnished, can they? Well, if there's an
Those
SSI,
actually can.
if there's an
the-
SSI component, they can't.
If
Correct.
there's an SSI component, that's correct. It can't, but the SSI is also not paid directly towards the child.
Right.
So if there's not an SSI component, then the non-custodial's disability check could be garnished for the arrearage.
Correct.
In addition to the fact that the custodial parent is already receiving, in my fact pattern, twice what the child support would have been.
That is exactly right. Yep.
But isn't it also true now, as far as the division is concerned, isn't it policy not to enforce child support when a parent is disabled, a non-custodial parent?
No, we have to, if that's SSDI,
Mhm.
we have to enforce that.
Okay.
We don't if it's SSI.
Right. Okay.
I'm just worried, are we promoting I'm not going to worry about paying because I'll get this arrearage, and then when my disability gets approved, I will, this will be applied towards my arrearage. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot to think about there.
It is.
Yeah, because I know it can take years, in my experience, for some folks, 3, 4, 5 years to get their disability approved, right?
Right. And then they get a lump sum, and
Mhm.
a portion of that lump sum should go toward the child.
Yeah, the lump sum comes into play from the point they applied for the benefit.
Yeah,
That's where they start tracking that.
yeah, if it gets caught on somebody's radar, there have been plenty of folks who are not going through, DHS or something that miss out on that lump sum, and the lump sum's gone, and there's still this huge arrearage. Oh, yep. So, but your research, Pat, did address the concerns that we talked about previously about whether or not this commission even had the authority, or the state even had the authority to do this, because this is actually a federal act. But your research says, yes, in fact, the state does. Is that correct?
Right. Other states have been doing it.
Okay.
Pat, can I jump in, Judge, just a second?
Please.
Pat, would middle ground, as we're struggling over this, also be to simply could we simply statutorily authorize the judge to consider and award an equitable credit, much as the law allows the judge to do that in a situation where custody has been changed under, I think it's Daniel versus Daniel, that allows that equitable credit?
Yes, and some states have even established it as a presumption. So that, if the court finds bad behavior on the part of the non-custodial parent, they can still deny that. So that might be a consideration.
So just for our non-lawyers, Regina, you're referring to a situation where, dad, let's say, has been paying child support to mom for, this amount of time, but there's an arrearage, and it comes to court on a contempt or an arrearage or something and says, hey, this kid's actually been living with me for the last 2 years, and there's no dispute over it. In fact, dad has had the child for the last 2 years of this 4-year arrearage or whatever. Then the court can say, all right, we're going to look at equitable credit and give you credit for the last 2 years or whatever, since the child was actually living in your home. That's what you're referring to. And you're suggesting that maybe we could, judges could have that same equitable credit discretion when it comes to whether or not this excess disability payment would be credited towards the arrearage.
Yes, and that may eliminate some of the objections to the bill and the what ifs, or the proposal and the what ifs.
Uh-huh.
What about the bad actors? What about the people that have been gaming the system? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you don't make a hard and fast rule where there's an automatic set off, and instead create an equitable credit, discretionary equitable credit for the judge, you might eliminate some opposition.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought.
I like it.
And then the question, would there be a presumption or rebuttable presumption or not?
Yes.
Well, Katie, I took over that and I said I was throwing it back to you. Anybody have any questions or concerns on that?
I'd like to can I make a motion
Sure.
that we pass this on to the commission and ask for their opinion or approval of the idea that these funds may be used for arrearages at the discretion of the court?
At the May 2nd full child support commission meeting?
Yes.
I'll second that motion. All in favor? Do we need a quorum on this?
We do not
Right,
have
that's what I was
quorum.
gonna ask.
Oh, do we have one yet?
We're at no,
don't think
we're
so.
at 7 members unless someone has joined us in the last few minutes. And
Yeah.
I did send an email out to members who were not in attendance and ask for just one person to join. So I don't think that's happened at this point. Could be a lot of people in court today and at the legislature and so forth.
Speaking of quorum, I don't know who all was copied on it, but did Noel and Elaine and Latana, did y'all see that Judge Petty had to resign from this committee because of some appointments she got for some other committees?
Oh, no, we didn't have any word on that. So
Okay, I'm sorry. She sent it to me and I think she copied Judge Williford, but I'm not really sure. And
She did copy me, and I'm sorry, I thought everybody was on it.
And as I have already told y'all, I've been so buried in work that I haven't had a chance to forward it to you, but to the extent that that affects quorum, we've lost Judge Petty as a member. She's not serving the state. She's just not serving the state on this committee.
right.
That's right.
Okay. If and Katie, thank you, because if this moves us to 14 members, then we have 7 in attendance. We're supposed to have half plus 1. So I think we still don't have quorum,
Yeah.
but so
So is the motion, so the motion is to present this to the statute or to the full commission.
Correct.
Okay.
I
Is
don't
there-
think there's anything from keeping us from making a motion that day to the full commission regarding this. I don't think you have to have a motion to, you see what I'm saying? I think that
Yes.
as commission members, we can bring this up and make a motion to do that regardless, if we have quorum at the full commission meeting in May. So why don't we just plan on doing that, Pat?
All right.
May I ask a question also? Do we need any language? Does Holly need to draft any language for what you would want the commission to consider?
I'll draft something
Or
and
is that
send
too,
it.
is that ahead? I just was thinking.
Yeah, I'll draft something and send it to everybody. How about that?
Okay.
I'll send it to you to distribute.
Or to certainly give to Holly.
Right.
All right, so that at least when we make those motions, we'll have something that they could actually, has some teeth in it. All right,
Okay.
Katie, I think that takes us to E.
Okay, E, and I don't have my executive
All
agenda.
right, well, I'll keep going then.
Thank you.
That
Please.
is the statutory language implying mandatory nature of the special expenses deviation.
I don't
We
understand.
talked about previously the word shall, if y'all remember that's used twice in OCGA 19615, of course, I2J. But all deviations are discretionary. So we talked about while the deviation is discretionary, the word shall is in that part of our child support statute. And we need to decide if the statutory language needs to be amended and whether or not we need to work with Holly on that particular section of the child support statute where we use shall twice. And in fact, all deviations are discretionary. And I think that's just something that when we started talking about the special expense deviation and we actually pulled it up one day and started looking at it, whether or not it's discretionary or whether it's not, then we were like, well, yeah, they're discretionary, but wait a minute, we use the word shall, and as lawyers, that's a big word. That's a strong word. That means you must, right? And so I think that the work of this subcommittee actually found a problem that maybe we didn't even know existed. And the question is whether or not we should have Holly create some statutory language to amend that. And again, we don't have a quorum, but I think we could deal with this the same way we're dealing with the Social Security section is we have found this problem and perhaps we need to bring it up, put it on the agenda for the full meeting in May as something that we have found and that's something that we feel like needs to be addressed. And if Holly already has the language drafted, then that'll be something that we can propose and move to do at that time. But I'm a little bit confused as to, Noel, is this something that as a statute review subcommittee, we have to have a quorum to move and approve before we can bring it up before the full commission? Or help me understand what the proper avenue would be to get these kinds of things done when we don't have a quorum in a lot of these subcommittee meetings.
Sure, that's not my understanding, that there doesn't need to be a formal motion, but you as, first of all, chair of this subcommittee, and then second of all, a full member of the commission could simply ask that it be put on the agenda, a proposed agenda that's then approved by Chair Key for the full meeting. But does somebody want to drill down on this more before presenting it to the full commission? I mean, there is argument to be made it's tricky language. I think the problematic sentence is, oh, now I can't find it again, but
I pulled it up.
that the very last sentence of it's subsection II, it's the special expenses incurred for child rearing. This is where it comes up. At
Right.
the end, the very last phrase says, then the additional amount of special expenses shall be considered as a deviation to cover
Yeah.
the full amount of. So for me, I think there's room for argument to say that the court simply has to consider it, weigh it. There should be something on the record that it was considered, but can deny it in their discretion to deny all deviations if they feel that that's in the best interest of the child. Or do people think that is confusing and there is this dissonance in the statute that it says shall at the very end of this subsection that is discretionary with the court. So I think that's the crux of the.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me of that, because you're right. On I, special expenses incurred for child rearing towards the end, talks about exceeding the 7% of the basic child support obligation, then the additional amount of special expenses shall be considered as a deviation, which means shall be considered means it's discretionary. It's not discretionary to consider it. We must consider it, but it's discretionary whether or not we
It's
do it.
granted. Right.
That's right. Yeah. So
But I don't know if that's still confusing enough to warrant say may. I don't know.
well, I think there's a lot of our statutes that require us to consider things, and requiring a judge to consider something shall is the appropriate word, I think, to use there. It's not we may consider it, we must consider it. So
Right.
Oftentimes when I'm writing orders, I write it in such a way that it's clear that I considered it if it was something that I had to consider. Okay. I might have said I considered it, but no, but I'm going to put language in there to make sure that if I get appealed, and certainly for the parties to understand that I was well aware of the fact that I had to consider it, and I did in fact consider it. So I'm glad that you were making us pull that up and look at that again, because it's not as confusing as we think it is when we read the whole thing in context.
I agree. I don't think the shalls, and I actually think there's more than two. I think there are three, but I don't think the shalls aren't related to the deviation or not. They're related to, it's like the second step. It's like if the judge is opting for the deviation, then we have some shalls. And I don't think they're connected to the deviation piece, which is not mandatory. Now I agree with Judge Williford, we should always examine the word shall carefully, because that's an important word in law. But I think as I'm seeing the three shalls I'm seeing there, that's connected to sort of that secondary step. Once a deviation, if there's going to be a deviation, then, the court shall look at this and shall look at that. That's how I'm reading these. So I appreciate the conversation, but none of these shalls, as I'm reading them right now, are
problematic.
Right. for the underlying point that that our agenda item is, there's a structural dissonance in the statute which uses the word shall twice in subsection I, but all deviations are discretionary. Yes, all deviations are discretionary. I think this is saying if you get to the point of a deviation, still leaving it in the discretionary category, then you shall consider these other things if you're going to do that. But I think the threshold question of deviation or not is still a discretionary question for the court. And I don't think that these shalls change that in any way.
All right. I think we went down a rabbit hole with that one, and I don't think it's anything that even needs to be done.
I agree.
So, unless somebody
I agree.
disagrees with me, let's scratch E off the list.
Agree.
All right.
Thank you, Judge.
And then we move to F and G, which I'm going to just speed it up a little bit because we're now at almost 11:40, and there's a few things that we still need to do. and the more I thought about this extraordinary expenses outside the child support worksheet and the 7% test, the more I think we've gone down a rabbit hole with all of that stuff too. Katie, am I missing something? Or Regina, I think you initially moved for this. What is it that we need to do regarding this? My notes say that in the September 22nd meeting, the subcommittee started a discussion on the benefits and risk of addressing extraordinary expenses, which are the special, the medical, and the educational outside of the worksheet, including the issue of possibly creating non-modifiable terms in an order, which we talked about before with, things like private school tuition or whatever. Sometimes you can put those things in there and they're not modifiable. So the question is, can extraordinary expenses be handled outside the child support worksheet? And do we need to discuss further the benefits and risk of addressing those outside of the worksheet? There's always that discretion, right? That you can put it outside of the worksheet, but if you do, it's no longer child support, a lot of these things. And there may be some case law to support that if it's not part of the actual child support addendum, child support worksheet, and there's a change of circumstances in the future, that you may be stuck paying the private school tuition or whatever it is that you handled outside the worksheet. Noelle, help me remember what it is that we need to be addressing here.
Well, it's one of these long-standing issues that I think came out of the Parenting Time Deviation Study Committee. But I just yesterday read, I think, a case that's instructive on the matter. It's relatively recent out of the Court of Appeals. It's called Day versus Mason, and I'll throw the site in the chat in a second, and I could even send it around a copy to everybody. But
Okay.
It's a 2020 case out of the Court of Appeals, and they reversed the award. It's actually quite a lengthy case. One of the many issues is extracurricular expenses, where the trial court in Cobb ordered, as part of child support, ordered non-custodial to pay half of the child's future extracurricular activities with a limit of one activity per season. But it says the court made no factual findings to support a deviation. So it was really interesting. It saw this as a deviation. It didn't name which deviation this was, but I'm assuming special expenses for child rearing. So it says, but the court made no factual findings to support a deviation from the presumptive child support amount. Accordingly, we reversed this award. So it's interesting to see that our appellate, so they reversed the award not because it was seen as inappropriate in general to deal with it outside of the worksheet. I mean,
they just didn't make the Schedule E findings. Right. And I have seen that most, I would say the majority of the cases that get reversed on child support have to do with the court not making the proper Schedule E findings. It's like, all right, court, you have this discretion, but if you're going to deviate, you've got to jump through these hoops and put these findings of why you're doing it and answer these questions to satisfy this in the best interest of the child. And when that doesn't happen, and I say judges, but as we know, judges are oftentimes presented with orders from attorneys, and everybody agreed on, everybody signed off on it. We sign it, gets filed, and then it gets reversed, which is why my staff attorney goes through all of it with a fine-tooth comb, because I hate being reversed. But the key here is that even though the attorneys or the parties agreed probably that, all right, this is how we're going to deal with the extracurricular activities, you know, and they put a paragraph in there, which I've done myself, Katie, I'm sure you have too. Since they were handling it outside of the child support
Mhm.
and outside of Schedule E, they didn't really think to add the factual findings and all of those things in the order, right? And the court reversed, which means the court said, hey, you have to handle these. Do you read that, Noel, as you have to treat this as child support, even though you opted to handle it outside of the child support?
I do. I do based on the language in the opinion, because I have another sentence to offer. It says, it goes to what you're saying. Thus, even assuming the parties reached a fee splitting agreement, well, fee splitting, that's funny, cost splitting
Yes.
agreement as agreed by Mason, or like even if the parties made this agreement about splitting the cost of the extracurriculars, there is no evidence that any such agreement contained findings of fact to support a deviation. So it's considering it child support. I have not wrapped my head around or considered enough this non-modifiable terms. Is this, I mean, if it's declared child support by the court, then I don't think it's a separate contractual agreement, even if it was reached by consensus of the parties. The Court of Appeals is viewing it as a deviation and is only rejecting it because there was a lack of findings of fact. So they seem to be already.
I mean, how's that for a practice pointer? Also, it's sort of, you know, to our agenda item here, you know, handling it outside the worksheets, it seems that the Court of Appeals is blessing that practice as long as you're doing it with findings of fact, which, you know, I will share. That's not typically how I do that.
Yeah, I think
if I pull it out of the worksheet, I don't turn to Schedule E if I've taken it out of the worksheets. But I think what we're saying is, you know, maybe we don't need to, and I'm not necessarily advocating this. I'm sort of thinking this through out loud here. But if the Court of Appeals has already blessed the practice and doesn't seem to think that it's contrary to our existing statute, then why would we change the existing statute as opposed to make it an education, you know, item that we get the word out to the
family law
bar that, you know, if you take it outside the worksheets, you still better, you know, you better answer the 3 questions at the end of Schedule E, even though that feels a little counterintuitive because the whole point is that you're not using Schedule E to make the deviation.
But I think it should be clear, though, in whatever agreement, that this is being considered as a deviation as part of child support. Like this isn't just some side agreement. It has nothing to do with splitting up assets or anything like that. This is an agreed upon component of child support.
Well, I'll just tell you, when you draft it into an agreement, that's where you put it. I mean, back me up here. You're drafting agreements that have child support. You know, you put in the monthly child support, whatever that looks like. You address another paragraph that deals with uninsured medical expenses, and then you know, if there's an agreement to deal with extracurriculars outside the worksheet, you do a paragraph saying in that all under the heading of child support.
Yeah, anything that has to do with support for the child.
I usually add the introductory phrase, something to the effect of as additional child support, comma, you know, the parties have agreed to share in the extracurricular activities of the children as follows, you know, 50-50, 80-20, you know, whatever the percentage is going to be. And then I have some language about what the reimbursement terms are going to be.
And see, that really gets, if lawyers don't understand the way the worksheet works and the 7%, that brings us to the 7%, you know, is it really supposed to be this way? Or did the lawyers consider the 7% before they applied the percentages? And so I'd like to look, unless anybody else has any further comments, I'd like to give that some more thought and read Day versus Mason and maybe kick this can down the road to the next meeting. And we may not have time in the next meeting because I know we're going to hear from Dr. Venor, but I just don't think we're ready to move on anything or address anything regarding that right now, because I think it needs some more thought and some more research. So let's just keep, and unless somebody has another suggestion, let's just keep putting that as an agenda item until we have time, so we don't forget about it. Until we have time to delve into that a little bit further. And Noel,
Quick
if-
question before we leave the topic. Somebody mentioned Daniels a minute ago. Does anybody have a case site on that? Because the Daniels I'm thinking of is a live-in lover case, not a child support case.
I'll get
didn't
it.
hear
I'll get it
James.
for you, Katie.
Thank you.
Judge Wilford, may I just interject for a second because we're running short on time. It's 11:50.
Yeah.
And we always have a full agenda to talk about, but there is, and I'm really apologize for this, but we want to briefly jump to new business because was a bill filed on the 21st on Tuesday, has House first readers on Wednesday, has House second readers yesterday, and it pretty dramatically modifies, what Elaine and I call our statute, 1960 Child Support Guidelines Statute. So if you'd like.
You're talking about House Bill 499?
I am.
Yeah, if you'll quickly just update everybody on that and what that is.
Yes, and I apologize. I did just read this late last night. It modifies several code sections, 1969, about when the parties are going for child support, but in a state of separation. No divorce has been filed. It also modifies 19610 relatedly. And then, of course, our statute. I will jump to the portion that affects the Child Support Guidelines, 19615. And the major point is to expand the duration of support.
For disabled adults.
Right. What they're calling post-majority child support is the term that's literally used in proposed section E2. It's adding a whole subsection. There's currently E1 and now there's an E2. I can just briefly read it to you. I think that's pulling out. Well, let me not. It's saying that child support could be ordered for a disabled child, and disabled child is defined as an individual with a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities and which meets the criteria for a disability under state or federal law. Just gut reaction to that. Substantially limits one or more life activities. Everybody's going to say, what does that mean? I do think it mimics the federal ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So there's probably a lot of case law, not binding, but instructive on that definition. It then says, our statute is, the way I phrase it, it's phrased differently in the statute, but goes to you're 18, the age of majority, unless you're still in high school, at which point it terminates at 20 years old, even if you're still in high school after 20 years old. So this, the proposed statute, House Bill, 499, is allowing for child support for disabled children, as I just defined, or as they just defined, who is in the custody of a custodial parent. It also, sorry, I'm just reading all of my annotations here. It also says this should be in addition to and not in lieu of the benefits or assistance a child may receive from a source other than his or her parents. And it does allow for modification if a child becomes capable, was incapable, but then becomes capable of supporting him or herself independently. So it also sets an effective date of July 1st, 2023. Anyway, so it dramatically expands child support. It seems to imply to me that the child support guidelines should still be used when determining the support amount.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's just an extension of the timeline if it's a disabled child.
Exactly.
So other than that, I think you would still go through the same, requirements and amounts and all of that. It's just going to continue post majority under certain circumstances.
Exactly. And that whatever public assistance or Social Security or whatever you want to call that, whatever assistance the child's receiving directly, I'm reading this in one of the subparagraphs, not to be able to be an offset to any sort of child support. This would be above and beyond, and this would go to whoever, I'm reading it to be, this would go to, the support amount would go to whoever the child is residing with, like the custodial parent, as we call it.
Right.
In most cases, if there's a, excuse me, a child who is disabled and the parent still has to continue to care for that child, they get guardianship of the child at the age of 18. So it may be custodial or custodian or guardian. But I see the point of asking for the extension. So.
I definitely do too. The only concern I have is now trying to figure out, you know, if this person meets that actual criteria. There are different levels of, you know, I envision that making perfect sense when somebody is, you know, extremely disabled, cerebral palsy, and, you know, autism, you know, severe, moderate, severe autism, you know, these Down syndromes, these certain things where it gets to be a more severe disability that prohibits that person from being able to produce income. But, you know, if you have ADHD or you, and I'm not saying there's anything that ADHD isn't a disability, but you know, there's a line, you know, and it can get slippery, right? Where, you know, are we now asking folks to continue to support because of a disability that we may not think is particularly completely disabling, you know? So I don't know, that will be interesting to see what all the criteria is for that.
Right. Right.
If I can just be heard briefly,
Yes.
I'm concerned about an establishment of child support statutorily under a state statute affecting the ability of a disabled adult to receive supplemental security income. And I know that in my practice, I had a couple of cases where I had to be really, really, really careful not to affect SSI benefits on behalf of a child who obviously then is going to become a disabled adult. And I think somebody needs to be really careful about pushing this through the legislature without taking that into consequence and comment from people from Atlanta Legal Aid, Georgia Legal Services, and, you know, other entities. And it sounds like this bill is moving through pretty quick. So I'm a little concerned about that. And otherwise, that's all I have to say.
Carol, that's an excellent point. I remember having some disabled clients who we had to really be worried about what they were going to inherit, or, you know, doing special needs trust and so forth, because the last thing you wanted to do is affect their Medicaid, you know. Mm-hmm. So, and, you know, which came, of course, with the SSI benefit. So we're not members of the legislature, but surely somebody is taking that into consideration, because that is certainly something to be worried about. But it sounds like, Noelle, that we certainly need to keep an eye on this, right? To see if it does pass, what changes we need to make to our statute.
Well, right. I mean, if it's passed, then it has changed our statute.
Well, it has changed, but whether or not that changes something else that they didn't actually think about, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I really just raise it today because yes, it appears to be moving quickly, and it affects our statute directly. It amends it directly. I'm not sure if we're going to be called on to take a position on it, or if we're going to be called to give any sort of testimony or anything. I have no idea. And the legislative process isn't my forte, but I wanted it on your radar. And we may, I don't know, given what we're asked to do by the legislators, the filers, have to call a full commission meeting. Anyway. That's why I wanted to bring it up in case something official is needed from the Child Support Commission. And maybe it's, I mean, the legislature, the General Assembly, obviously it's their purview to amend the statute. So they may not ask us anything, but in case they do, I wanted us to be prepared, at least have this on our radar as something.
Right. They can certainly amend it without our permission.
And they
All
will.
right, so let me, it's 12 o'clock now, or it's about to be 12 o'clock, but we did get started about 10 or 12 minutes late. So
Right.
if we could just push through very quickly and just run through a couple of issues. The 7% test, I'm going to come back to that. We may actually table that to the next meeting. That when modifications may be brought within a 2-year period, this is something that I addressed back in the November meeting that has given me a lot of sleepless nights and concerns. The more I thought about it, I thought, how in the world could this be the case? But when I came on to the commission and I first started looking at the potential changes to the parenting time, I was shocked, as most of you know, to learn that there's no parenting time built in, because for 20 years, or 15 years, whatever it was since we were doing this, I thought otherwise. And this is somebody who practiced almost exclusively as a family law attorney. So that was shocking to me. And as I learned that, and I started thinking about other areas of the code section, one of the code sections that seemed to not make any sense to me, or one of the sections in our statute, as Noel and Elaine call it, was paragraph K regarding modifications. And as y'all know, that there are, you get this modification every 2 years, there's a change, but there are circumstances where you can come back and ask for a modification when it hasn't been 2 years. And you look at these, certain things and go, okay, have any of these things happened, which is laid out in, except as provided in paragraph 2 of the subsection, which is subsection K on modification. So 2 is no petition to modify child support may be filed by either parent within a period of 2 years from the date of the final order on a previous petition to modify. That's a previous petition to modify, not a divorce, which was not a petition to modify, by the same
or a legitimation. Initially.
That's right, or a legitimation by the same parent, except when A, B, C, right? A is a non-custodial parent has failed to exercise the court-ordered visitation. B, a non-custodial parent has exercised a greater amount of visitation that was provided in the court order. All right. So let's don't worry about C right now, because it really, I don't think is where my problem is. My problem is with A and B. We're saying if a non-custodial parent has either failed to exercise or has exercised a greater amount of visitation than is ordered, that can be one of the triggering things that allows a modification, even though it hadn't been 2 years from the date of the last modification, okay? But why would parenting time matter when parenting time isn't built into the child support worksheet?
So I've been thinking about that, Judge Williford, and I think I could think of a couple of examples. Okay. Throw this out there. I think if there has been a deviation for travel related expenses connected to parenting time, but the parent isn't actually exercising their parenting time and therefore not incurring the travel related expenses.
Okay.
I think that could be one area where it could come in.
Right.
Hang on, I had one other that I thought of. It's sort of a similarly like unusual circumstance, but still possible. It was something in that same vein, and I've just lost it.
Well, so there are some rare exceptions then.
Right. And I would agree that would be rare.
But as judges are looking at this statute, and I think as practitioners are looking at this statute, that's not what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about a travel expense deviation. They're thinking, hey, they were court ordered to get 110 days. And they haven't exercised but 20 days, or they haven't exercised any of them. Or I was ordered to get 100 days, but I'm actually got the child half the time, or, that's the way it reads. And I think that in the real world is the way it's being exercised, is being implemented. So wrap your head around this. So let's say I'm the one that's paying the child support. I'm paying child support based on a worksheet that assumes I get no visitation. Okay. I'm ordered to pay $800 a month. It assumes that I don't get 1 day. But since the court order says I get 100 days, if I only exercise 30 of those, it may mean that I've got to go in and be modified and potentially pay more because I didn't exercise my 100 days, even though the amount I'm paying is based on me getting 0 days.
I agree with you.
Are y'all following me, Pat?
Yeah. I think this might be poorly drafted. I think the original intention here actually came from a judge who said, somebody wants that parenting time deviation because they say they're going to have the child 50% of the time, and then they don't have the child, then we need to be able to raise their child support.
It's almost like take back the deviation.
Yeah,
right.
Like remove.
And
the
I
deviation.
understand that, but I think that was because nobody, and this is from me talking to the family law section president, nobody understands that it assumes 0, right?
Right.
So
Right.
how in the world, if it assumes 0, can we say we're going to penalize you if you don't exercise what was ordered? I mean, to me, it seems like it made perfect sense when there was going to be a Schedule C, right? So the whole thing goes up and the whole thing, is supposed to get approved because it all works together. But then Schedule C gets dumped, right? And we kicked that can down the road and said, we'll address this later. We're going to pass this, but not with the parenting time deviation. Well, there's a parenting time deviation in E, but not with the Schedule C, the adjustment. So, but we failed to then make the changes necessary in K. And, while we're working on fixing the parenting time adjustment thing, adjustment/deviation, whichever way we go, which we'll hear from Dr. Venor on that, I think we cannot lose sight of this subsection K and make sure that whatever we do, we address this language in K as part of that package, because to me, that's very problematic. And I don't know that it makes sense to go to the legislature and try to do anything until we do the whole thing. But I don't want us to lose sight of that subsection and the problem with that subsection.
I agree with you completely, Judge Williford. And I will say that even my example of where it could come into play, where you've got a travel related deviation, is, kind of piggybacking on what Pat said. The original intent, was, if somebody says, hey, I want 50% time and the judge gives it, that's still connected to a potential deviation. Those are, under both of those scenarios, it's a deviation that kind of doesn't come to fruition, if you will. And I agree with you on both fronts. I think that any changes to parenting time need to account for the fact that the statute right now really doesn't make sense if you consider how it's actually written. This small portion of the statute doesn't make sense.
All right. We're going to move G, which is the 7% test. We're going to table that to the next meeting. It may get tabled again, but we need to table it to the next meeting so that we don't lose sight of it. And then just moving to new business, Noelle, I know you addressed House Bill 499, but can you just quickly update us on the resolution that was filed in the Senate and whether or not we've heard anything from the House?
I haven't, but the good news is there has been a resolution filed in the Senate for the creation of a legislative study committee on parenting time and I believe, just parenting time. Anyway, so that's great news, and hopefully that'll move along and be approved. I haven't looked just in the last day or so. I haven't heard about anything on the House side.
Okay.
but I will double check that. So it will be per body, you know, we had hoped for the the unicorn of a joint legislative study committee, but that
Right.
looks like it's not necessarily going to happen. But I think that's great news that the Senate has moved to form one.
All right.
And I'll keep you posted.
Regina, do you know anything about the House?
I have not spoken with Chairman Ballinger about her resolution. I will say the study committee resolutions are not subject to crossover day.
Oh, perfect.
In fact, that's why there's no, there's not the same sense of urgency about a study committee resolution that there is regular bills. And so
Perfect.
frequently in the Senate, you see a bunch of them dumped toward the end, and as long as they go through committee, sometimes on the Senate side, they even bump them into the Rules Committee and assign to the Rules Committee to start with, and then they all come out on one big calendar on the Senate side. So House does it a little differently, but now that I think all of her legislation except one big one is moved through committee or is moving through committee, probably we'll hear something from Chairman Ballinger right before crossover day or right after crossover day would be my expectation.
Well,
And
somebody in the
just
courthouse is
because
doing.
they're not joint committees doesn't preclude the chairs from deciding to meet jointly. They certainly could.
That would be
Well-
helpful and efficient.
That's why we're so blessed to have you on this subcommittee, Regina, to educate us on those things. So we don't necessarily, I think we've been worried a little bit about crossover day and the deadlines, and we don't necessarily have to worry about that for the study committee. So it's nice though that we've already got something from the Senate and we're still waiting for the House, but that is taking place and that's wonderful. So the next scheduled subcommittee meeting, as we said earlier, is Friday, April 21st at 2 p.m. via Zoom webinar. And Dr. Venor will be participating in that meeting via Zoom. So we need to make sure if there's any way possible that you can be in attendance on that day. That's going to be a very important meeting if you'll try to schedule that. And we will talk to the staff and discuss scheduling meetings for June and August. We have and get that out. We have a May 2nd full Child Support Commission meeting. But if there is nothing else, no new business or anything that we must discuss today, we're now sitting at 12:12. Anything? All
What
right.
time on the 2nd is the meeting, the full commission meeting?
What time is the full commission meeting, Regina?
I'm checking, Judge.
Okay.
I need to look
Also,
at my
Judge,
calendar because I'm
we
not
had,
remembering the time.
Judge Wilford, we had Judge Key just join us, which I was hoping would mean we had quorum for a second, but I think Jason Nonis had to drop off, so we're
Oh,
still.
no, I didn't know that.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We could have
Mhm.
voted, but y'all have to do the old email thing.
Right.
Yes. And the commission meeting on May 2nd is 10 a.m.
All right. May 2nd, 2023 at 10 o'clock a.m. And that's going to be.
It'll be a
both-
hybrid.
It'd be
Yeah.
hybrid, yes.
Right.
So you can attend in person or via webinar, but our next subcommittee meeting is via Zoom webinar on Friday, April 21st at 2 p.m. All right, well, thank y'all all for bearing with us during the technical difficulties and agreeing to stay a little bit later, and for your patience as we work through those issues. And if there's no further business, then we will be adjourned. Have a great weekend.
13.